Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution tonight. I had a bit of a theme in my mind, and I couldn't get past it today, and I just more and more things just started coming up into my mind about if I was to convert to Mark Ward's position, and I actually thought of maybe making a professional video like this where I'm like Mark Ward in the forest and talking and all that, and I thought it's just too much time. So I was wondering what to do a video on, and I was actually going to do a critique on Matthew Everhard's video, but he took it down and replaced it with a new video because he felt that people got offended by it. Now, if you watch the first video, it was just him like ranting on like a 12-year-old girl, and it was really toxic. And so no wonder he took it down, because he's supposed to be a pastor and all the rest of it, and I guess he was embarrassing himself. But I thought, what if I converted to Mark Ward's position? What would that mean? Like, when the rubber meets the road, what would that mean? Me going, okay, Mark Ward, there's no video, only audio. Okay, it might be really hard. Yeah, for some reason the connection is unstable. So what I might do, I might shut down. Well, I've sort of got to have this on there. So what I'll do is I will. Yeah, so Everhard removed the video. I sort of was hoping that he would leave it up because it shows his true colors. And, but anyway, so, I mean, most people know my true colors and where I stand. I'm not trying to, not offend people. If they get offended, it's like, man up, drink some, concrete dust and water and just harden up a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to show you what would happen to me if I converted to Mark Ward's position and became a disciple of Mark Ward. So here's Mark here. So we've got to have the look. Hopefully my video is still working there, and you've got to have the proper haircut there. So do my hair, comb it back a little bit. Get the waviness happening. I haven't got the 3-day growth. I had a shave yesterday. Okay. Maybe the top button, because his earlier videos he did the top button. So I want to make sure it's legit. I got the glasses, and I know I'm a bit more chunky, a bit more like a Teletubby than Mark Ward, but there I am. I've converted to Mark Wardianism, and I've got my favorite books here, which I'll just show you. My favorite books, Carson and White. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some themes that seem to be part of being, a Mark Ward convert. And so now, because before I'm obviously a critical text guy now, but I won't admit that straight out. What I'll do is I'll just say that I was upset with the hard words. I came across a hard word. I was reading along, and my interlinear Bible didn't adequately, translate that word. And so I thought, well, what's going on here? And so instead of finding out the truth of that and just, Googling Will Kinney or KJV Today or TextusReceptus.com and, doing the homework on that, I've got a Bible that has 2,900 less Greek words, and it has 8,000 changes. And so that's so much better. That's where I'm heading, because now I have confidence in the Word of God instead of being an absolutist and a cultist. Because, you know, who wants to be a fascist? Who wants to be like Bart Ehrman? I don't want to be like Bart Ehrman. And so I thought, well, I don't want to be like Bart Ehrman. I don't want to be like Peter Ruckman. And so I want to be just confident in the Word of God. So now I have confidence. And so, you know, I love the King James for Bible. I just love it. I love the prose. I love everything about it. I spend most of my time warning people not to read it because they'll get confused. But I love it. It's my favorite. And if anyone goes out there and says it's not my favorite, they're just psychopaths. And so, you know, I would much prefer to, you know, update the words. And so let's just look at an example here. So we've got I can show you where halt will be gone. This horrible word, let's look at this. This horrible word halt has just been so deceptive. I mean, let's look at this in the King James that I love, and you know, have candles on both sides of it as I read it. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind halt. There's the halt. I mean, you know, how can you read a Bible with that in it? Halt is just absolutely terrible. But, you know, I guess I did have a little bit of concern about all these words at first, you know, just missing from the Bible. I mean, but I can't say they're missing. Even though the footnote says they're omitted, I'm not allowed to use that word. So what we do is we use the word and just say that they're added in the King James. And, you know, some really nice, good scribe just wanted those words in. It was his favorite story, and he put it in there. And so the blind, I'm finding that a lot of these words are missing. But I guess, what would you rather have? I'd rather have these false friends that have been cleared up and made understandable, like halt, rather than having all these horrible additional friends. And so I guess my former position as a King James only Ruckmanite, Riplingerite, Gippite, communist, fascist, I would have seen these as being omitted, but now I understand that they're added. And instead of just worrying about these things and missing friends, and, you know, because these are friends, I probably would have thought that these words were missing or absent or being kidnapped or, you know, something like that. Or, you know, like Everhard said, you know, aliens are taking them away or something. Instead of being concerned with those, now I'm concerned with these and updating them. And so that's what I'm really, you know, concerned about. And, you know, the last 12 verses are Mark, the Prickabay Adulterate. There's only 2 of those really big ones that have 12 complete verses that add up to 24 verses. That's like, you know, say 2nd John and 3rd John put together, totally omitted and sort of flushed down the toilet sort of thing. But there's only 2 of them, just two of them. So you can rest assured that there's only 2. Doesn't that help you? Doesn't that satisfy your conscience? Don't you feel great when, you know, grandma's coming up saying, what's going on? How come these words are gone, or there's a footnote, or you don't preach from it? And it's like, there's only 2. And if that grandma turns around and says, hey, I actually like that story, you can look at her. I mean, I look at people like that now with pity, and I just say, well, Wake up to yourself. This is the science. This is an ascendancy of a scientific dictatorship here. The science works. Westcott and Hort were just like scientists. They were just showing you the neutral text. They didn't have a bias. Why would they? No one ever has a bias when it comes to the Bible. They're all good-hearted people, and we are all just trying our best. And anyone who says otherwise is just deceived. And so I know I was going through the New King James, and I come up with this reading, and I thought, wow, that is so much more understandable. Because when I got to Numbers chapter 21, verse 14, in the old King James version, which is like the Latin, but, it's my favorite, wherefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, what he did in the Red Sea and in the brooks of Arnon. Now, the New King James really cleared this up for me, because it says, wherefore it is said in the books of the wars of the Lord, Wahabin Supra, the brooks of Arnon. And I just think, Wahabin Supra, I was just like, whoa, it was an epiphany. I thought, this is so much more understandable. Why was I so deceived? I was afraid of these modern versions. I used to quiver at night. I used to sit there, wake up in a sweat and go, these modern versions are just out to get me, and I was, every now and then I'd go to a bookshop and look around and just, sneak a peek at one of these modern Bibles, but then, think, oh no, I'm going to lose my ministry status, and quickly shut the book and throw it back on the bookshelf. And I was afraid of these things. But now I'm proudly saying that it should read Wahab in Supra. I mean, how much more clearer is that than, what's it say? Lord, what he did in the Red Sea. I mean, I'm sure I've spotted like 3 or 4 false friends there. I mean, I'm not sure what this article is, but they're clearing it all up for me, because here the King James has, 1 Samuel 13:21. Yet they had a file for the mattocks, and for the coulters, and for the forks, and for the axes, and to sharpen the goads. But in the New King James, it clears it right up. It says, and the charge for sharpening was a pim. I mean, who doesn't use a pim nowadays? I mean, I've got pims all over the place. Haven't you got pims? Love my pims. And I just can't get over how much clearer that is. And in here we have the NIV. It has the price was for 2/3 of a shekel. So I sort of prefer the New King James over that, because it's like, it doesn't mention the pim there, and it's sort of going on about the shekel, and 1/3 of the shekel is down there. But then the work of God Children's Illustrated Bible has their spades, their forks, and their axes were blunt. Okay. So I'm getting all, like, I'm starting to collect a whole bunch of different Bibles. I've gone down to, Logos Bible software, of course, and I've got that, and I've bought like 700 different English Bibles, and I've got them all out, and the most popular ones, they do seem to contradict each other, but that I don't let that bother me, because I just know that, when the people were writing the Bible, there was mistakes in the Bible in the original. So we can't expect there wouldn't be mistakes today. And they're human. Who do you think you are, God? If you want a perfect Bible, then you think that you're God. You think you're God, and you think that you are creating universes. And what would you rather be? An academic or a Mormon? I mean, it's your choice. I mean, you can follow us if you want, have truth, have friends, have, be one of the cool kids, Or you can be one of these crazy, half-brained people who don't like education. You can be like that. I mean, Wahhab and Supra, I mean, that is just, it touches my heart. I mean, 2 Samuel 14:14, which cannot be gathered up again, neither doth God respect any person. I mean, look at that horrible doth word, it's so hard. New King James says, yet God does not take away a life. So much clearer. Neither doth God respect any person. Here it has, God doth not. I mean, this is clearly just an update of the archaic words and things like that, because, yeah, and, there's so many TR editions. I mean, there was TR edition, Complutensian and Polyglot, and the 5 editions of Erasmus, and you got, all these other ones in between, and the Textual Receptus. There's so many of them. Which one is it? I mean, Jeff Riddle's saying he follows the Textus Receptus. I'm like, which one? There's so many, and it's like, but I mean, I guess our Bible wasn't made then. It didn't really exist. I mean, Vaticanus was sitting there in a library, but no one really copied it, and no one cared about it. Erasmus looked at it and said it's rubbish. So did most other people. But the Bible that we have is correct because it's older. It's from older manuscripts. The oldest is the best. And so, even though no one copied it, no one really translated it, no one used it. And I guess Vaticanus and Sinaiticus had to be put together as sort of like a, bit of amalgamation. I guess it's like making a cake. God waited until 1881 to make the cake in a perfect way, but it's never going to be perfect. I mean, if the originals aren't perfect, why would you expect Westcott and Hort to do a perfect job, or anyone after them? I mean, yeah, and so sometimes, we do go through we have the wrong, genealogical lists, but we can just put up with that because who do you think you are, God? If you want the correct genealogical list in your Bible, you think you're God. I mean, if you want the correct numbers, I mean, the Bible is not a book of maths. If you think that Jesus Christ in the flesh, you've got a problem. But if you just humble yourself, if you stop being so uncharitable to your brothers who are just trying hard and have PhDs and have the qualifications that you just wish you would have, then you would see that these just simply aren't a problem. I mean, why would a contradiction in the Bible matter? You've just got to stop caring about those things and stop being an absolutist and come to a point where you're just confident, where you can relax, not be so stressed out about these things. Just relax, take it easy, and realize that there are genealogical errors, historical errors, contradictions, solecisms in the Greek. There are wrong locations, wrong geography, but that's fine. All those mistakes were in the originals. I mean, because you can't expect man to produce anything good. We're sinners, and I know God said that He preserved His word and stuff like that, but we've dealt with those particular 3 verses out of like 80. We've dealt with those so that you can have confidence in the Bible and the message. See, God didn't preserve His words. He preserved His message, just the roundabout sort of, Jesus came and He did some stuff and then He died on the cross and all that. But, that's all you need to know. You don't need to, why get into these pesky little details? Who do you think you are? Jesus? I mean, I used to pick up a new Bible, your ESV, NIV, ABL, A743 Bible edition, and I would read through it and I would see a variant, and I would become flustered and red in the face. It was like I looked up pornography or something. It was a sin. I was like, I'm sinning against God looking at this variant, especially when there's 400,000 of them. Bart Ehrman, he's all these variants everywhere. And I was dreaming about variants. Every time I'd turn around, there's a variant just right there. And I had to repent constantly of seeing variants, because I was afraid of variants. I was so glad that James White and Mark Wardianism and others pointed that out to me, that I was petrified of variants and didn't know what to do about it. Just the variants. But now I accept all the variants. And it's kind of fun. It's sort of like a Ouija board. When you're a young kid and you have a Ouija board, you're like, which number's going to come up? And you're sort of, whoa, this is so much fun. And as that glass slides across the table and you get that word that comes out, it's like you get a spiritual rush. And that's what it's like. And so I just can't understand why more people haven't crossed over into Wardianism. There was that magical moment when I found the Oxford English Dictionary. I mean, even though I'd written articles like in 2005 where I mentioned Oxford English Dictionary, that was when I was an onlyist. So I didn't know how to use it. I thought I did, but, obviously Mark Ward has schooled me and shown me that I don't know how to use that. And but it was like Christmas when I discovered that, when I discovered the Oxford English Dictionary. I mean, it was kind of a common part of my life, but anyway, we won't go there. I mean, now I can pick and choose who I want to listen to. Because when people criticize me, if they're a tiny little bit forceful, I just simply say they're uncharitable. Oh, they're uncharitable. I'll only listen to this one person. And so what I do is I say, well, I'll listen to this person because they, not like all these other bombastic brain dead fools, but I won't say it in that way, because if I do, then I'm sort of bombastic in myself. So I have to be sort of like learn how to be like sort of passive but aggressive at the same time. And so it's like all these unfortunate people who haven't had the blessing of an education like me. These people, I mean, these illiterate people, I don't have to put up with, but I can zone in on just someone who can just be some random guy on the internet and just say he is the one who is actually listening to me, and he's the one who takes me seriously. And I'm so shocked. I thought there was no one out there who would actually listen to me. I thought there was no one out there who was actually taking me seriously and reading through my things and replying and, spending hours answering things. There was just this one guy. And I was like, wow, there is hope for those cultists and heretics. When I find contradictions in these modern Bibles, I just think to myself, it's okay. And that sort of answers everything. If you see something that comes against your position, you just go, that's fine. We're not absolutists here. We don't really care about every word and all the rest of it. We just care about the message, because what we don't want the words. We want Jesus. We want the Holy Spirit. That's what we want. So, I mean, I did go through a phase where I was a bit worried about, Unitarians being involved with Westcott and Hort, on their Revised Version Committee. And then I thought, Unitarians are good guys. Like, have you ever met a Unitarian? They are so friendly. I mean, they're cupcakes. And they're just so friendly. I mean, we all know that it's just how to win friends and influence people. That shows the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is how friendly you are and how nice you are. And so, so the first thing I did when I converted to Mark Wardianism, I split my church. And so Mark said to do this. So, obviously being a pastor of, 13 years there, I just thought straight away, well, I'm going to go and make this an issue. So I made it an issue, and it split the church. And then so we had to leave and sort of ruin my life. But yeah, Mark said to do that. And so I'm just believing that it'll get better one day. And I mean, I've taken out a mortgage against my house to pay for the, Logos Bible software that I've got. But I mean, times are hard, times are hard. But, we are suffering because of these divisive people. These people are so divisive, I can't believe it. They are heretics. They separate. They cause problems. And so, anyway, now when I go to a Bible study, I'm always speaking up. If anyone says halt, I'm like, hey, no, what do you think it means? And so I quiz people. I quiz the children on the bus. I say, do you know what that word actually means? And they're like, oh, please just leave me alone. And I'm like, no, you have to read it. And I go through it and make sure that they realize that they are reading a Bible that won't ever speak to them. Yeah, even though Mark said that he grew up reading that Bible and it was good for him, and so did Timothy Berg, and so did Peter Montoya, and so did Elijah Hixson. I guess all of them read the Bible as teenagers. And they're all supposed to be the gurus. So maybe I'll end up like that because I read the Bible, King James Bible too. Then I'll end up sort of like them. But yeah, then I'll have that extra edge because I'll have the modern ones. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm constantly just correcting people who use words we don't understand. Working on being charitable. So sort of a bit like saying, telling someone to get stuffed, but in nice words like, oh, please, you're upsetting me. Sort of like being the tone police. And I find if I just watch the Democrats, I find that I'm getting top quality lessons in that. And constantly being offended, I take the moral high ground in every situation. And I always set myself up now as the teacher and other people are the students, that they really don't know that much. But I'll never let them know that. I'll always allow them to think that I think highly of them when really I'm going home and laughing and laughing and laughing at their stupidity. But I don't say that to their face. I just say, oh, you funny guys, obviously you need to come away from the King James and you need to get your kids away from it, your family away from it, your church away from it. But the thing is, I love the King James. I love it. So now I've replaced Peter Ruckman with Michael Heiser. And I've replaced, just simply reading the Bible, having a Webster's and having, I obviously didn't know how to use the Oxford English Dictionary properly. So I would have had these inferior, tools. But now I've got all the tools. That's great.
But I've sort of swapped a few of these tools over because I had Ruckman before. Now I've got Michael Heiser. And even I have of late had some Catholic leanings. So Verbum Bible software, which is Word, that seems to do the job as well. It's so good. I'm just so glad that, we're a blessing to the Catholics. I mean, it does say in the Nestle Alarm text that it is, a partnership between the Bible societies and the Vatican. I didn't realize that this would take me to the Pope, but I seem to have become a papist. But that's fine because everything's okay. And we're all coming together and we all love one another. See, it's all about love. Why do you want to be so divisive? I mean, who do you think you are, God? Who do you think you are? So, yes, just being generally charitable and getting away from these horrible conspiracy theories, these blue-blooded alien conspiracy theories, Area 51 conspiracy theories, kidnapping by aliens, demons coming in the night conspiracy theories. I don't have to deal with that anymore. Now I have peace in Jesus because I've discovered Jesus. Since I stopped reading that old Bible, I now have Jesus. And it's so good to go from Ruckman to Heiser. It's so good to go away from Sam Gipp and Ripplinger and all those other people to jump straight in to the Nephilim, to believing and knowing that all these gods are real. Whoa. I mean, Logos Bible software is just, these guys are pumping out the academic guild that are just touching so many hearts. I mean, one thing I have discovered and one thing I really think I need to do, especially when I go to heaven, is I'm going to rebuke Paul. He was really, really angry. He had anger problems. Where's the tone police? I want to be the tone police in heaven, and I want to tell Paul that he needs to sometimes just shut his mouth. He needs to sit down, have a break, read an NIV or something, probably the net version, get some Dan Wallace material, and just calm down, because he was rebuking people and they were going blind. I mean, Peter, he was involved with the death of Ananias and Sapphira because they were lying to the Holy Spirit. I mean, where's the grace? Where's the forgiveness? Where's the how to win friends and influence people there? And so, I mean, when I get to heaven, I'm going to have a word with these guys, because obviously we can't follow the book of Acts and what they did, because they were doing all these horrible things that go against how to win friends and influence people. And so, I mean, even Jesus in Matthew 23, I mean, he went a bit overboard. And see, I mean, the new Bibles say that Jesus got angry and that anger is a sin because the words without a cause are taken out. So, I mean, Jesus probably sinned, that's fine. He's a sinner. And so, I mean, obviously he was in sin in Matthew 23 when he said people are snakes and, said people are going to hell and all this sort of stuff. Where's the tone police? I mean, Jesus, obviously, the disciples, they should have really pulled him up there and said, hey, brother, you need to watch out. You need to be careful. You're becoming bombastic. You're becoming horrible. And so I just thank God that people with smooth minds, who are always calm, cool, and collected, like James White, other people who, are part of the critical text movement, who just exemplify love always. And, not like these people in the Bible like Jesus and Paul and Peter, who were just bombastic and just horrible. And, even though, now sometimes I'm uncertain about the Bible, but we have certainty in what is the Bible, but the things that aren't in the Bible that are in the Bible, like, say, the last 12 verses of Mark, Peter Gurry said they're Gnostic. James White said, James White said they're Gnostic. Peter Gurry said they're apocryphal. So that's in my Bibles now, but I don't have to worry about that because it's all just cleared up, because you don't have to worry about every word, because, the King James guys don't know which TR edition. And so, doesn't that just give you a confidence that we are right and they're wrong? Which TR is it? I just ask that anytime they open their mouth. I'm like, which TR? Which one? I know, the Dean Burgon Society was saying it's the Textus Receptus underlying the King James, and so does almost everyone. But what you do is you just start bringing up these other TRs and Erasmus, and you go right back there. Well, how can they answer that? We got them. And I've started to burn my old King James books. I'm getting a pile, the Edward Hills, why so many versions, and I've got tons of these books. I'm gonna be warm all winter. I'm going to burn these one at a time, and I'm going to replace them with good, wholesome material, like, Heiser and other guys, who can just help me with this. And also, I didn't realize that apparently before I was speaking with a Southern accent, I was sort of talking like this. And so I'm trying not to talk like that. I'm trying to be a little bit more intellectual. And yeah, so anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was painful to do. Okay, so let's look at some of these comments. Oh. Can I undo it? There we go. All right, I'll get another screen up here. Here we go, Mark Ward. Instead of easy believism, it's Mark Wardianism. Easy readism. That's a good one. Hey, Nick, there's no video, only audio, so hopefully that got fixed. Oh, good. Ridiculous, why he sort of makes out that, people got offended and so we had to pull it down. It's like, no, you were behaving really toxically. And he's pulled it down because he knows people like me are doing videos on them. So it'll be up there forever, and so he's quickly pulled it down. I couldn't find it anywhere. If anyone saved that, send it to me. Good, the video started. I was wondering about the shirt. Not your normal style. This isn't my normal style. I was thinking about the whole being a comedian thing, and it's not really my deal. But I just couldn't help myself. The more that I thought about this whole Mark Ward thing today, I was just writing down heaps of things and just thinking, this is hilarious. This is comedy. Additional friends instead of false friends. Let's get some Thomas Nelson English translations of Vaticanus and Sinaiticus so we can fully appreciate the earliest and best. Yeah. So where are they? Well, if you want Jesus dying by a spear instead of dying from the cross, you'd want Bibles like that. Nikki's costume playing a Wardite. The brackets finally got him.
To anyone new, Nick is being satirical here. He's only joking. I think they would have got that for sure. Don't forget Esau, Nick, to summon the Bible buffet. Bible buffet. Yeah, you got a lot of versions there. Bob and Docky and Image Bearer. Solid, useful satire as opposed to Everhard's Pop-Tart Martian tirade. Pop-Tart Martian tirade. That's just hilarious. Yup. I meant. You're right, Nick. God only inspired the original pen and language. Tell it like it is. It's supposed to be Nick. Nick says, so God created the heavens and the earth, but he can't preserve his words. Perhaps he sent Mark. Well, maybe Mark Ward's a new prophet for us. Well, he is. He has announced that he is the apostle for King James onlyists. So he's our apostle now. Thank God for the Savior. My modern critical Bible makes Jesus a liar, but that doesn't matter. The major doctrines are mostly there, so I don't care how many verses are edited out by critics. Yeah, that's it. You got the major doctrines. I mean, you can fit most of the major doctrines just on an A4 sheet of paper. So you can probably, I mean, these guys would probably be happy if you just deleted, like, you know, First and Second Chronicles, and you know, as long as you got the doctrines in there, you know, the Bible becomes, instead of a book that's alive and it's God's own words speaking to us, it becomes just a book of teachings, you know. KJV only people scare me. How dare they take God's promise of preserving his word to the bank? Oh, that's gold. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, how dare we? Just say, Mick, they're dangerous dummies. I had to watch what I was saying. It's really hard to be that nice. I find it really hard to just be overly cringe-worthy nice. I don't care if someone thinks I'm a dummy with a King James Authorized Version 1611. Amen. And so obviously this is satire, so if people have jumped on and I'm saying all this stuff and they're unsubscribing, you didn't get the joke, but hopefully you did. Have you read the translator to the reader to the 1611 Bible? Yes, I've probably read that about 400 times. So I would say I'm pretty much an expert on that. If Bart Ehrman doesn't permit a verse in my Bible, then neither will I. Well, that's the thing. Bart Ehrman is basically just part of the academy, and he is absolutely in bed with most of these guys. These guys will come against his agnosticism, but they believe his bibliology is pretty sound, in a sense where, when I'm talking about his bibliology, his choices, his textual choices, his academic writing, which comes against the TR and promotes the critical text, they run with that. And so Docky said, I now study with 11 Bibles. When I run into contradictions, I just hop over to the next Bible. And this is what amazes me, because it's like, oh, just, you know, open up all these Bibles and read them, and then you get to a place where there's contradictions, and it's like, where do you go? And then it's like, oh, you go to the Greek and Hebrew, but then the definitions favor, you know, half the time the people who have brought out their Bible have brought out a, you know, Hebrew and Greek grammar or whatever, you know, a concordance to match. And so that's what, in the Revised Version, they have matching sort of concordances. And so, of course, the Greek and Hebrew are going to match, you know, the English, because they're designed that way. You're going to rebuke Paul. Now, that's a first. I've never heard anyone say that in 29 years of ministry. Yeah, it's sort of, yeah. So I definitely wouldn't rebuke Paul. I remember there was a pastor and his wife. They actually said that they believed that Paul had sinned by going to Jerusalem when someone gave him a word and wrapped a rope around his hand and said, the person who I'm wrapping this rope around their hand, that they're going to be bound like this into Jerusalem. And he just said, look, guys, don't break my heart. I'm going to go to Jerusalem. This is God's told me to do this. And I was told that he sort of sinned there, that he was prideful. But I just don't see that. He was told beforehand that was going to happen and that these trials awaited him and everything. So he was just going forward. I mean, in the Old Testament, clearly there's the story of the prophet who hears from God. He goes off to do his thing. And then when he comes back, some other prophet says, hey, you don't have to do this. So he didn't, and he was eaten by a lion. And so obviously we have to do what God's telling us to do. We don't just let someone else come along and just say something. Helgi, good to see you. Yeah, so I tried a bit of stand-up. They call me Funny Man Nick Sayers from now on. But I'm sure this will get a little bit of attention. I might even get on Mark Ward's radar where he's like, oh, look at this guy, teasing me. And, he probably won't mention it because it's so, I do say quite a bit of truth there. And I'm, pretty much just poking the bear. But he won't, these guys don't want to acknowledge me because, you can't really not acknowledge Jeff Riddle and a whole bunch of other guys, but you can with me. You can just pretend I don't exist. And James White did that for quite a while until he was like, this guy's just, he keeps poking the bear. And so he did a whole 1 hour dividing line just about me. It was quite funny. That's the dividing line where he actually stopped believing in the Nestle Alarm 28th edition and went with the Tinder House, because I pointed out that he has conjectural emendation in his text. So yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed that. I've only gone for like 47 minutes. It's actually nearly midnight here in Australia, so I might cut it short and just sort of enjoy my weekend a little bit. But I'll definitely do another video this weekend on something. Some of the things that I want to do, I don't really want to get into comedy stuff. There is one guy who I watch a little bit in my subscriptions. This guy. And he's absolutely hilarious, but I couldn't do this type of thing. Yeah, I think it has become one of the last stands for freedom of speech. Comedians nowadays are coming out against certain movements, and they're getting supported and things like that for basically stating the obvious. And people are like, well, I'm so glad that there's comedians because they're sort of standing up for the rest of us. But yeah, I think I don't think I'll do any more comedy. I think I'll just be the serious guy from now on. But unless there's anything that you guys want to chat about, because on Sunday I'm going to be doing Textus Receptus study where I'm Matthew 1:1 still. And so I'm getting quite a lot of interest in that, actually, people watching it. And so I was planning on doing some normal type of preaching, because I used to do that quite frequently on Facebook, where I would just get a part of the Bible and just preach, what was in that. And I find now oftentimes I'm reading through stuff, just picking it to pieces, going through, the NIV says this, the ESV says, I'm sort of in that mindset
where I really want to sort of try and break out of that and get back into a lot of the Bible teaching that I was doing. But not, I can multitask. And so I'm doing the TR study, and I can do that, and I can do these type of videos. And so, so maybe just share your thoughts on the Everhard video while it's still fresh. It looks like he uploaded a replacement. Yeah, so I guess like Jeff Riddle did a rebuttal to that. And, Jeff Riddle always does a good job. I guess with Everhard, he comes across as very confident. And so just from what I can remember, he's talking about footnotes. And he was basically saying that, he's an academic and, all academics know that when you footnote something, it's just as important as the text itself. And I'm like, but that's not the reason these things are footnoted. It's not like, footnotes in a book, footnotes in any type of academic work show further study, or they clarify things. These marginal notes, many times they're designed to just create confusion. Say, for example, if you look at the revised Standard Version, so that came out in 1946, the New Testament 1952 with both, they had a marginal note in Matthew chapter 1, where instead of saying Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ, it had Joseph, who was the father of Jesus, as a footnote. So you'd think something that big would be, wow, this manuscript must be important. Is that in Vaticanus or Sinaiticus? It wasn't even in a Greek manuscript. It was a Syriac manuscript. And there was only one manuscript, but they had to put it in a footnote. So this is the problem with the footnotes. The problem with the footnotes isn't so much that there's footnotes, because we know the King James had footnotes. Many Byzantine texts. So these guys go through all that and say, oh, there's footnotes everywhere, so we're just doing the same thing. No, you're showing many times where there are texts that many times what they have, say in the New King James, they'll have a reading, and then they'll have in the footnote, they'll have the King James reading, and it'll say, the Vulgate says this. But what they're not telling you is the Vulgate and the Masoretic text say that. The Hebrew actually does say it. So they try to make out, the King James guys got this from the Vulgate. So if you're reading along and you just read that footnote, you're like, oh, I didn't realize the King James version followed the Vulgate there. Wow, it's following the Latin. Critical text guys are correct, and they keep moving on. Well, it doesn't tell you the full story that, the Vulgate follows the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text is the same as the Vulgate. That's why they went with that. And so these are deceptive marginal notes. Dean John William Burgon talked about the 616 marginal note that was in the revised version. Maybe I should actually look that up. 616 revised version. And so it appeared in, actually I'll type in 1881. That'll come up. Okay. Oh yeah, the Parallel Bible. I find this webpage is very awkward. But we'll see. We'll just see if we can crack it. Find the book of Revelation, chapter 13. Sometimes you just crack it. Okay.
Accept cookies. TR study. Looks like it didn't really do anything. Okay, I accepted your cookies. 1 Peter. Let's go further. Okay. Interesting. Revelation 10:6. We're nearly there. Maybe 2 more pages down the road. Yeah, so it should be here. Yeah, some ancient authorities read 616. I'll just enlarge that. So you can see that there. Some ancient authorities read 616. So Dean John William Burgon, he looked at that footnote and said, this is ridiculous, because at the time, there was only one manuscript that had that. Why did they have to put that in there? And it had some ancient authorities. So it's the manuscript, but plus, someone talks about it, an early church writer. Why have that? Does that encourage your faith? Does that, bolster like, wow, 666, that's the correct reading? You're reading through this. Why do you have to know that trivial piece of information that's obviously wrong? I don't know anyone who believes that's the mark of the beast, So Facebook users said, I noticed recently people complaining about charismatics on the ground of sufficiency of scripture, but the same people would endorse loose translations like the NIV. Have you noticed this? Yeah. I think sometimes the hypercharismatic groups exist because of these other groups, and these other groups exist because of the hypercharismatic groups. Now, they probably would exist by themselves, but what I'm saying is they become strengthened in the fact that people are judging the hypercharismatic groups, and they're throwing rocks at them. But when they really don't believe that God has preserved all his words and everything like that. So you'll get these, word of faith groups throwing rocks at them. And so sometimes these groups are actually attacking each other over issues of, cessationism and things like that. But really, none of them are just submitting to the word of God. It's just an aberration that's sort of happening on the sidelines. And so, like, even James White said that NIV is a liberal translation. When he was the Alpha and Omega Ministries headquarters, Anderson had a bunch of questions about the NIV, and he said, don't think I'm going to support every reading in the NIV. It's a liberal translation. And Anderson's sort of like, oh, okay. It's quite funny when you listen to these guys or you read their books and then you listen to them in debates, but then just getting them relaxed on the couch, they'll say some bizarre things. It's like Billy Graham, he would, obviously have ghostwriters and people who wrote his books and made them theologically sound, but then they'd do an interview with him like Robert Schuller did, and it's like, this guy is an absolute heretic. And it was oftentimes in those places where he would be on the fly and he would just say, I don't believe in a literal hell. Hell is just, suffering in this life and all this stuff. And so it's quite interesting when you get, that's why I like to slow the videos down of text critics and listen to exactly what they're saying, because oftentimes when they're being interviewed and they have to give a quick answer, that out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. So many times they'll say stuff that is quite amazing, because when you look at James White's book, can you trust the modern translations? Well, if he's saying the NIV is a liberal translation, well, then can you trust it?
And why does he have all these examples of, NIV on one side, King James on the other, and all the rest of it? And so why is he defending something he believes is a liberal translation? Matthew Everhard removed the video and replaced it with a milder one yesterday, I think. Yeah. So we were talking about that. And so what else did he say? He said basically that aliens had stolen the variants. Where did they go? He's talking about Area 51 conspiracy theories. It just really annoys me when someone uses conspiracy theory to win an argument. The thing is, conspiracy theories are real. I'm not saying every conspiracy theory, but I mean just the fact that if any type of conspiracy, if you have a theory about it and you say, okay, well, I think maybe the pharmaceutical companies are creating drugs that normal behaviors are now becoming aberrations. If a kid's a little bit fidgety and wants to go and play ball all the time, well, ADHD, he's got something wrong with him and it needs to be drugged. And so people have brought this up all the time over the years, and sometimes it's become mainstream where they talk about it. But if you just think, okay, well, that could be happening, you're a conspiracy theorist. And so if you think that, there are groups out there who would just rip you off, banks, mechanics, doctors, people doing real estate scams. Sometimes you can have personally been affected by this, and you're like, it's a conspiracy to get money, or it's a conspiracy against something, and so you've got a conspiracy theory of what's actually happened and why it's happening. And it's just so dumb when these guys use that term as if conspiracy theory equals flat earth, or conspiracy theory equals Area 51, and it's just dumb. And even the Bible has the word conspiracy in it. But I do understand that there is conspiracy nut jobs, people who believe that the Queen was a lizard, and all that sort of weird stuff. And it's like, there's a lot of bizarre stuff around flat Earth, but I mean, see, half the time these guys don't realize that they actually believe in a conspiracy. They believe that we are part of King James onlyism, and that we have leaders in this movement who are influencing us, like Ruckman and Ripplinger and Gipp and Waite, and these people are sort of like leaders, gurus, who are sort of brainwashing us. So they believe that. Well, it's just not true. I've come to this position just by looking at the facts and looking at logic and going, well, hang on, that reading's dumb because it goes against all the evidence, and it makes a contradiction in the Bible. It contradicts the other new Bibles that have come out, and this is stupid. But if you do that, then apparently you're in a cult, and so that's a conspiracy theory in itself. And so these guys actually labeling us conspiracy theorists. These guys have that in their mind when they're talking about us. So Jeff Riddle has not given a full-length refutation of Matthew Everhard yet, only some comments on his Jots and Tittles number 5, but it will come later, I'm sure. Yeah, and I'm hoping that someone downloaded the video, because it is quite damning. And I actually wrote underneath it, I said, this is probably the worst critical text video, or the worst anti-TR video on the internet at the moment. And he was saying that, what was it? We couldn't even read Pop-Tarts or something like that, or I can't remember exactly what he was saying. Where are we here?
Yeah, Pop-Tarts. So if you can read a box of Pop-Tarts, you can, understand what Mark Ward's saying, or something like that. I can't remember what he was saying, but it was quite harsh. He was very harsh. I mean, for someone like him who's like, I'm Mark Ward's best friend, and it was quite full on. But I would rather it be on that level. You know what I mean? If you're going to call a spade, if you're going to say that I'm a occultist and, that I can't, think properly and all the rest of it, I mean, I'd rather you just say it to my face rather than, all this nicety and just say the same thing in a roundabout way that, just all the comments underneath are like, oh, you're such a nice guy and butter wouldn't melt in your mouth. And, oh, you win the Dale Carnegie Award of how to win friends and influence people. And I would be your friend. And just all these comments. And you're just like, man, are you actually listening to what this guy says? But I'm sure that these guys just have the fanboys where they're, Mark Ward's probably got like 20 of his friends who every video he does, they just jump on there and say, Mark, you've done it again. It's like, there's enough in the new video to refute too. Yeah. So what else does he talk about? Talks about the footnotes as being more academically reliable. I mean, say look at the difference between this footnote here. Some ancient authorities read 616. Like, how is that going to help anyone? This is the King James on this side. It has Greek to give them. Okay, so the reason that they put this in, it says, he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand of their forehead. Now, if you learned a little bit of Greek, you would understand that to receive in the Greek means to give as well. It's just the context that formulates the difference. And so you could learn a little bit of Greek and go, oh, hang on, don't the King James translators realize that it actually means give there? And it could be confusing. So they've written in the Greek, okay, we know that. We understand this issue. We're putting that there so you can rest assured and have surety in the words of God that we've gone through this issue. We understand that in the Greek, receiving, in most cultures, giving and receiving are the same word. And so which video did you want re-recording of Everhard's? Well, Everhard deleted it. So it was a video basically called or something about marginal. It was his latest video. So if you type in Matthew Everhard, you go to his page. His latest video is he just uploaded a new edition of that, which overrode his old edition. So I looked on Wayback Machine. I looked on a bunch of other things. I couldn't find it, but maybe someone out there was like, oh, that's interesting, and downloaded it. The authorized version on the names of blasphemy, or the name of blasphemy, or names. I mean, it's just, these are like helpful. They were wounded. In the Greek, it's slain. They weren't just wounded, they were slain, but it has to death. So we wouldn't say that in English, slain to death. We'd say wounded to death, or to make war. Very helpful. But here, these ones are like, some ancient authorities omit, and it was given over them. Okay. All written from the foundation of the world in the book slain. The Greek text in this verse is somewhat uncertain. Yeah, great. Thanks. You know what I mean? This is all the way through. And so it's not so much having it. It's fine to have marginal notes. I love looking at commentaries. I love looking at, Bible studies and all sorts of things. But when they have notes that are wrong, see, that's the thing. Having notes that are correct, that's fine. And even if they want to put in there that of Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, see, I would rather, if they've got a modern Bible
and it has in there, okay, these are in double brackets in the apparatus because Vaticanus and Sinaiticus don't have it, but these other 1,637 manuscripts do have it. I'd rather have that. See, the thing is, they have skewed information as well. So if you look at 1 John 5:7, they just say, oh, most Greek manuscripts don't have this. But they don't have, but it appears in 95% of the Latin manuscripts, and it's also well attested in the early church writings. And also there is huge internal evidence for its inclusion, because without it, there's a solecism in Greek. They don't put all that information there. They just they just point at the bad point for the TR people. It's lacking in the Greek text. So, well, we know that, but what about all this other stuff? What about, and most of the time these guys don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the Latin. They don't want to talk about the fact that there's internal issues that occur in their text when the comma Johanneum is taken out. So Everhard is comparing the notes in the old Bibles with those in modern ones, apples and oranges. Absolutely. And this Bible here is probably ideal for showing this. I mean, clearly you can see he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. And in the Greek, it's breath, So that would be pneuma, spirit to the beast. And so, and that becomes, important. You're like, okay, life. And so they're just letting people know, okay, we know it's in the Greek, it's breath. And so their footnotes are very practical. These footnotes here, 616, some ancient authorities, the Greek text in this verse is somewhat uncertain. What, the whole of verse 6? The whole of verse 6 is just uncertain. Right. Where's your textual certainty? Obviously not there. And so this is just Westcott and Hort, let alone when you get into the New King James, let alone when there's so many footnotes. And see, sometimes the footnotes are dishonest. Let's just look at New King James Version. Go to Bible Gateway. And we'll go to 1 John 3:16. So I'll just go to 1 John 3 because it'll show the footnotes. Okay, so we'll go down to verse 16. Actually, I'll do a parallel Bible. Hopefully the King James comes up. Yep, perfect. Let's go down to verse 16. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. Where in the King James it says, hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. Now, the of God there ended up in italics in the 1769 edition. I believe that's a print error. It shouldn't be in italics. It's in the text of Beza. It's in the text of Stephanus. It's in there. So why is it in italics? That was put in there, obviously, by someone like Benjamin Blaney. But it's still in our text. We read through it, and most of the time we understand that there is a lot more italics in the latter editions of the King James. So sometimes you read through and it's like, well, in the 1611, that is definitely not in italics. Okay. But here we have, hereby perceive with the love of God. Okay. Now, the New King James, it doesn't follow the Textus Receptus here at all. It has, by this we know love. There's no of God. And here it's talking about that Jesus is God. Hereby perceive with the love of God, because he, who? God. Doesn't say Jesus. This is the love of God because he laid down his life for us. Okay, so it's not mentioning Jesus, as an antecedent here. It's just, it talks about God, and God laid down his life for us. This is a verse that's talking about Jesus being God. And so I sort of feel like I've got to show you guys that it should be in there. Because some people are like, oh, it's in italics, Receptus. Here we go. Okay, so here is the text of Beza, to Theo, agapen to Theo, the love of God. King James, love of God. In Beza's text, to Theo, agapen ton Theo, the love of God. And so we can clearly see it there here in the Latin charitatem Dea, the love of God. Okay, so it's in Beza's 1598, and it's in Scrivener's as well, but it's deleted in the Westcott and Hort text. So this is a place where the New King James follows the Westcott and Hort text. So how do you know? Well, this is the 1881 of Scrivener, the TR that he did. So anything that's bold like that, like say this word here with the 7 on it, you go down to the bottom of the page and that's what the Westcott and Hort text reads. So that's why we don't want to print exactly what Scrivener did. And they're like the Trinitarian Bible Society text. They got rid of the footnotes and they got rid of this. It's like, yeah, because they're following the Westcott and Hort text. The Nestle Alarm text doesn't even follow some of these readings. It diverts from this text in about 700 places. So this is an issue here. So number 6, it just says omits to Theo. So Westcott and Hort omits this. So I'll put W&H omit, just so you know that. Okay. But it's in the TR. It's in Scrivener's TR. It's in Beza's TR. It's in the King James without any footnote. But in the 1769, for some reason, it ended up in an italic. I think it was probably just a type error. Okay. And so maybe the Trinitarian Bible Society have tidied that up. Sometimes they do that, like with the italics in 1 John 2:23. There was italics there, and they print the Bible without italics there now in the King James. So, they're going through and cleaning these things up, which is great. But so clearly it should be in there. Okay. So I just thought I'd show you that. Surely the New King James, they don't have, the King James has love of God. The New King James just has, by this we know love. There's no of God there. Surely it's in a footnote. Where is it? 3:16, no, 3:14, 3:9. They don't even mention it. This is a departure from the Textus Receptus, and they don't even talk about it. And so, yeah, great footnotes. The New King James, they have the best footnotes. Where's that? It's a departure from the TR, a departure from the King James, and it's not even mentioned. So, yeah, great. Good job, guys. And so that's the thing. These guys aren't going around looking for these things so they don't find them. So anyway, I think I'm going to end the video there because I'm sort of scratching around for what else to talk about. But apart from that, I think that's about it. And so I much prefer to be grouchy than be the comedian guy. It was really hard to be the comedian guy. I'm just there going, this isn't that funny, but I had a bunch of things written out. And they sounded so much funnier when I wrote them out. But anyway, guys, God bless you, and we will see you next time.